The day I lost everything started like any other. I was organizing files in my home office when James walked in, his Armani suit perfectly pressed, his smile cold as winter. "Alexandra," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "We need to talk." I looked up from my work, noting the strange glint in his eyes. Something was off, but I couldn't place what. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," he replied, straightening his silk tie. "In fact, everything's finally right. I'm leaving you." He paused, savoring the moment. "Oh, and I've already transferred your inheritance to my account. All of it." His smile widened as he watched the color drain from my face. "You really should have read those documents you signed last month more carefully. My name is Alexandra Parker, and at 35, I just discovered that my husband of 8 years had orchestrated the perfect betrayal. The inheritance he mentioned, $4.2 million left to me by my grandmother Eleanor, was supposed to be protected in a separate account, an account I thought only I could access." "That's impossible," I said, my voice shaking. "Those papers were for the house renovation." James laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. "You always were too trusting, Alex. Too naive. Those papers gave me power of attorney, complete control over all your assets." He pulled out his phone, showing me the transfer confirmation. "It's all gone. Every last cent." I stared at the screen, my vision blurring. The inheritance my grandmother had left me, money she'd specifically wanted me to have to build my own life and follow my dreams, was now in James' account. "You can't do this," I whispered, but even as I said it, I knew he could. And he had. "Already done," he said, pocketing his phone. "And since the house is in my name," he gestured around us, "you have an hour to pack your things and leave." "Leave," I repeated, the word feeling foreign on my tongue. "This is my home." "Was your home," he corrected, his smile never wavering. "Consider this a valuable life lesson. Never trust anyone completely, especially not someone as ambitious as me." As he turned to leave, he paused in the doorway. "Oh, and don't bother calling your lawyer friend at CLA. I've already spoken to the firm's partners. They won't be taking any cases against me." I sat there, frozen as he walked away, the sound of his expensive shoes echoing down the hallway, seeming to match the pounding of my heart. But what James didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that I wasn't as naive as he thought. For the past 6 months, I'd been preparing for exactly this moment. It had started with small things, a missed call here, a strange text there. James had always been careful, but lately he'd gotten sloppy. I'd noticed the late-night phone calls, the mysterious meetings, the way he'd started asking me to sign documents without really explaining them. 3 months ago, I'd hired a private investigator, not through CLA's firm. I'd found Kate Reynolds through a friend of a friend. She was discreet, thorough, and most importantly, had no connections to James's world of high-powered lawyers and corporate deals. I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text to Kate. "It's happening, just like we thought it would." Her response was immediate. "Everything's in place. You know what to do." I took a deep breath and began gathering my things, not everything, just what I carefully planned to take. The rest was already safely stored in a place James knew nothing about. As I packed, my mind wandered back to how I'd ended up here. I'd met James at a charity gala 8 years ago. He was charming, successful, and seemed genuinely interested in my work as a children's book illustrator. We married after a whirlwind romance, and for the first few years, everything seemed perfect. Then my grandmother Eleanor passed away, leaving me her entire estate. She'd built a successful business from nothing, selling it for millions just before she retired. The inheritance wasn't just money. It was her legacy, her way of ensuring I could live life on my own terms. "Promise me you'll use this to build something of your own," she'd said in her final days. "Don't let anyone take your dreams away from you." I'd noticed changes in James after the inheritance came through, subtle at first. Suggestions about investments, comments about how I should let him handle the financial aspects since he was the one with business experience. I'd resisted, keeping the money separate as my grandmother had advised, or so I thought. My phone buzzed with another text from Kate. "Don't forget to accidentally leave behind what we discussed." I smiled slightly, pulling out a worn leather notebook from my desk drawer. It looked like a simple diary, but it was so much more. For months, I'd been carefully crafting its contents, making it look like my personal journal. Every entry was deliberately written to support the plan Kate and I had developed. I placed it in the desk drawer, not quite closing it all the way. James's curiosity would do the rest. As I finished packing my pre-planned bags, James appeared in the doorway again. "Time's up," he said, checking his watch. "Need me to call you a taxi?" I lifted my chin, meeting his gaze. "No, thank you. I've already arranged a ride." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe even a touch of uncertainty. He'd expected tears, begging, desperation. Instead, I was calm, collected, almost eerily so. "You're taking this well," he said, his confidence wavering slightly. "What choice do I have?" I replied, shouldering my bag. "You've won, James. You've taken everything." "That's right, I have. And you know what the best part is? It's all completely legal. You signed everything willingly." I walked past him, pausing only briefly. "You're right. I did sign everything willingly. Remember that." Outside, a car was waiting, not a taxi, but a sleek black sedan. Kate sat behind the wheel, sunglasses hiding her eyes. I could see James watching from the window as I got in, his expression puzzled. "He took the bait?" Kate asked as we pulled away. I nodded, finally letting out the breath I've been holding. "Hook, line, and sinker. He thinks he's won completely." "Men like him always do," she said, turning onto the main road. "Did you leave the notebook just where we planned?" "His ego won't let him resist reading it." Kate smiled, a sharp, predatory expression. "Perfect. Phase 1 complete. Ready for Phase 2. I looked back at the house, my home for the past 8 years, growing smaller in the distance, more than ready. He thinks I'm just another knave wife he can take advantage of. Time to show him how wrong he is. We drove to a modest apartment building across town. Kate had helped me lease it 3 months ago under a different name. It wasn't much, but it was secure and, most importantly, completely off James' radar. As I settled in that evening, my phone buzzed with messages from friends who'd already heard the news. James had wasted no time spreading his version of events. Poor, naive Alexandra, who'd mismanaged her inheritance so badly that he'd had to step in and take control. I let them believe it, let them think I was the victim, hiding away in shame. It would make what came next all the more satisfying. Opening my laptop, I pulled up a folder labeled Insurance. Inside were hundreds of files, emails I'd recovered, financial records I'd carefully documented, conversations I'd recorded. But the real prize was a series of photos Kate had taken over the past 3 months. James wasn't just a thief, he was careless. He'd been conducting business deals under the table, using my inheritance as leverage for insider trading. Every meeting, every handshake, every suspicious transaction had been documented. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from my other secret ally, Michael Jean, a forensic accountant I'd hired on Kate's recommendation. "Your husband just made his first mistake. He's moving the money exactly like we predicted. Everything's being recorded." I smiled, thinking about the carefully crafted trail we'd created. James was smart, but he was also predictable. His arrogance made him think he was untouchable. "Good," I replied to Michael. "Keep tracking everything and remember, he can't know you're involved." Setting my phone aside, I walked to the window of my new apartment. The view wasn't much, just a quiet street lined with small businesses, but it represented something important, a fresh start. James thought he'd taken everything from me, but he'd actually given me something invaluable: freedom from pretense. I no longer had to play the role of the trusting wife. Now I could be who I really was, my grandmother's granddaughter, a woman who knew how to fight back. My phone buzzed one final time that evening, another text from Kate. He found the notebook already, had his assistant make copies. "Are you ready for what comes next?" I thought about the carefully crafted entries in that notebook, each one designed to lead James down exactly the path we wanted him to take. "I'm ready," I replied. "Let him think he's found my weakness. Tomorrow we start dismantling his perfect plan piece by piece." 3 months later, I stood in my new office overlooking downtown, watching James's perp walk playing on every news channel. The SEC had found everything: the insider trading, the fraudulent documents, the other victims he'd scammed over the years. My fake notebook had led him exactly where we'd planned, making him so confident in his superiority that he'd gotten sloppy with the real evidence. Now, facing 20 years in federal prison, he finally understood what my grandmother Eleanor had taught me long ago. True power isn't about controlling others through fear and manipulation. It's about having the patience to let your enemies reveal their own weaknesses. As I opened the doors to the Eleanor Parker Foundation for Financial Justice, I thought about all the other victims out there, people who'd been betrayed by those they trusted most. My grandmother's inheritance hadn't just given me financial security, it had given me the means to fight back and help others do the same. James had thought he was destroying me, but instead, he'd helped me find my true purpose. Sometimes I realized the best revenge isn't just about taking back what's yours. It's about using it to ensure no one else has to go through what you did alone. Kate and Michael joined me for the foundation's opening ceremony, now permanent members of my team dedicated to exposing financial predators. As I looked out at the crowd of survivors, advocates, and investigators gathered to support our mission, I smiled thinking about James sitting in his cell, finally understanding that his biggest mistake wasn't stealing from me. It was underestimating the quiet strength of a woman who'd learned to play the long game. 1 year after James's arrest, I sat in my foundation's conference room, listening to another victim tell her story. Sarah Chen, a successful restaurateur, described how her business partner, also her husband, had systematically stolen her family recipes, drained their accounts, and left her with nothing but debt. I trusted him completely, she said, wiping away tears. We built everything together. How could I have been so blind? I shared a knowing look with Kate, who sat beside me taking notes. We'd heard variations of this story dozens of times over the past year, but each one still hit close to home. You weren't blind, I said gently. You were betrayed. There's a difference. Michael Zhang, now our full-time forensic investigator, was already pulling up financial records on his laptop. The money trail is similar to the Harrison case, he muttered, referring to what we now called the James Harrison playbook. A pattern of financial abuse we seen repeated in case after case. We can help, I told Sarah. But first, I need you to understand something. This isn't about getting revenge. It's about getting justice, not just for you, but for everyone he might target next. Later that evening, as I reviewed case files in my office, my phone buzzed with an unexpected message. It was from James's sister, Charlotte. Alex, please call me. It's important. I hesitated. Charlotte and I had been close once before everything happened with James. She'd reached out several times since his arrest, but I'd maintained my distance, unsure where her loyalties truly lay. Might be a trap, Kate said when I showed her the message. James still has 6 months before his appeal hearing. Or it could be legitimate, Michael countered. Charlotte's been cooperating with the SEC investigation. I decided to take the call, but on my terms. We arranged to meet at a busy cafe near the foundation, Kate discreetly positioned at a nearby table. Charlotte looked different, older, more worn. The Harrison family's fall from grace hadn't been easy on any of them. Thank you for meeting me, she said, fidgeting with her coffee cup. I needed to tell you something in person. James, he's planning something from prison. I found letters in our mother's house, correspondence with old clients. He's trying to rebuild his network. I felt a familiar chill, remembering how methodical James could be. Why are you telling me this? Because I was wrong, she said, meeting my eyes. When everything happened, I believed his lies about you. I thought you were the gold digger he painted you as. But then I found the old files, saw how long he'd been doing this, how many lives he destroyed. You weren't his first victim, Alex. But thanks to you, you were his last. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thick folder. These are all the letters, plus financial records I found hidden in his old office. Mother's dying, and she made me promise to make things right. James doesn't just deserve to be in prison. He needs to stay there. As I leafed through the documents, my mind was already racing with the implications. This wasn't just evidence of James's past crimes, it was proof he was attempting to continue his schemes from behind bars. Have you shown these to anyone else? I asked. Charlotte shook her head. Only you. I know about your foundation, the work you're doing. You're helping people, Alex. Meanwhile, my brother, he's still trying to hurt people, even from prison. It has to stop. Back at the foundation, Kate, Michael, and I spent hours going through Charlotte's documents. The picture they painted was disturbing. James had been running his schemes far longer than we'd realized, with victims stretching back over a decade. Look at this, Michael said, pointing to a series of transactions. He was using the same methods even before he met you. The only difference was the scale. Your inheritance was going to be his biggest score. And now it's his biggest mistake. Kate added with grim satisfaction. I thought about my grandmother Eleanor, how she'd always said that money was just a tool. It was how you used it that mattered. She'd built her fortune from nothing, and now I was using it to protect others from people like James. Contact the SEC, I told Michael. They need to see these before James' appeal hearing. And Kate, find out everything you can about these other victims. It's time you reach out to them. Over the next few months, the foundation launched what we called the Phoenix Initiative, a comprehensive program to help financial fraud victims rebuild their lives. We provided legal support, financial counseling, and most importantly, a community of survivors who understood what they were going through. Sarah Chen's case was our first major success under the new program. Not only did we help her recover her restaurant and recipes, but we also exposed her husband's connections to a larger network of fraudsters. Each case we took on taught us more about how these predators operated, making us better equipped to stop them. The day of James' appeal hearing arrived sooner than expected. I sat in a courtroom, watching as his confident smirk faded while Charlotte testified about the new evidence. His appeal was denied, and additional charges were filed for attempting to continue his schemes from prison. As they led him back to his cell, he caught my eye. For a moment, I saw something I'd never seen before in James Harrison. Fear. He finally understood that the quiet, trusting wife he'd so grossly underestimated had not only destroyed him, but had built something powerful from the ashes of his betrayal. That evening, I stood in my office, looking at the photo of my grandmother that always sat on my desk. She was standing in front of her first small business, a determined smile on her face. You were right, Grandma Eleanor, I whispered. The best revenge isn't just about winning, it's about making sure the victory helps others. My phone buzzed with a message from Kate. New case just came in. Another James Harrison type. You ready? I smiled, thinking about all the lives we'd already changed and all the predators we'd yet to expose. Always ready, I replied. Let's get to work. The Eleanor Parker Foundation had become more than just my redemption story. It was a beacon of hope for others who'd been betrayed, a testament to the fact that sometimes the worst moments in our lives can lead us to our true purpose. James had tried to destroy me with my inheritance, but instead, he'd helped me find my calling. Every case we took, every victim we helped, every predator we exposed was proof that the best revenge isn't just about getting even. It's about making sure that what happened to you becomes the reason someone else's story has a different ending.